Playboi, Carti, and Opium have become one of the most influential groups in hip-hop today, changing a whole generation's fashion, music, and culture. And because of that, people have been calling Opium more than just a label, an aesthetic and a lifestyle. In this video, we'll be looking at how all of this happened and how Opium changed a generation. Carti and Opium have had a significant impact on fashion, but this all started with Carti. Before the all-black high-fashion Rick Owens fits, there were the V-Lone Thugs and Hypebeast, who dominated Carti's fan base. The clothes that Carti fans wore were mainly dominated by Supreme, V-Lone, and Palace. But all this started changing in 2016, when Carti in an interview said he was wearing a lot more archive pieces.
I like number 9 and like Rick Owens right now. I don't know, I like the dark clothing. I like brown and black, and like wash like gray.
For now, Carti's style was still slowly transitioning into what we know him most for. He was actually wearing Rick Owens in some of his music videos, notably in Magnolia, where he was seen wearing Rick Owens Ramones and different Rick Owens pieces. People at that time weren't heavy on Rick yet. It was more a brand that people did wear. Rocky, Zendaya, and Uzi wore it, but it didn't translate into the mainstream of every kid trying a pair of Ramones until 2020. For now, the dominating theme of fashion of Carti fans was Supreme, V-Lone, and Palace. But this all started changing again in 2018 and 2019, when its fits took a different route into a darker and more avant-garde style. One of the earliest signs of this was actually in the Neon Tour, with the merch being produced by Art Dealer. The themes dove into punk, with the symbols in the merch being edgy and anti-establishment. As time progressed, Carti got more into chrome hearts and Rick Owens, with his shows having him draped in full Rick. Some of Carti's team members were also making comments about people wearing Rick. Artists inspired by Carti have also been seen wearing Rick Owens in their music videos. One of the most notable people was Destroy Lonely, wearing Rick Owens all the way back in 2019. And the connotation of the V-Lone Thug or V-Lone Warrior was going away. From October to January, Carti released a variety of fit pics, laying the foundation for how his fans are gonna take pictures in the future. There were two noteworthy captions on these pictures. One of them was the Opium heart, seeing Carti draped in chrome hearts. This also may be the post of him starting the label that changed everything. The other post was the one that was posted at the start of the decade, Vampire Weekend Red.com. This decade would change everything for Carti and his fans. Carti's fans were no longer the V-Lone Warriors of the past. They'd now be known as Vamps, a nod to one of Carti's favorite films, The Lost Boys. Carti wasn't the first one to call himself a vamp. People like Black Cray, SGP, and Lil Tracy were already doing it. And he wasn't the first one to do the all-black aesthetic. People like 3 6 Mafia and Raider Clan were already doing that, but it was Carti to make it as global as it is, influencing an entire generation to copy the aesthetic and fits that he had. Though there'd be an issue this year that didn't let people go outside, but that didn't stop Carti from releasing pictures and music. In March, Carti dropped one of the first pictures wearing the upside down cross. This was also around the same time where Carti was recording the second version of Whole Lotta Red, which had videos shot for it. One of these videos was 2.6, seeing Carti wear an enfant riche déprimé Opium shirt. If you find these fits familiar, that's because in 2020, Carti laid the foundation for what fashion was going to be for his fans in the future. This was further exemplified when he dropped Atma, seeing Carti again in the upside down cross, an all-black fit, and Rick Owens. Now, these three pieces would become one of the most frequently seen in Opium's members in the future. Carti's style development was also reflected in the people that closely followed Opium. If you recall before, Carti was into a lot of the streetwear styles that skaters used to wear. Carti actually used to be a skater too, and skaters really liked how Carti dressed. A notable one was Burberry Airy, who would see a massive stylistic change, becoming the creative we know and love him for. It also saw darker videos produced for Carti. Another team member in Joy Division, or Phoenix, would shoot more obscure videos in 2020. The most important one being the Trying to Get Down snippet, which zooms into Carti's Ramones and pans through his entire outfit. Rick started showing up all over the Opium camp, but this wasn't all of it. Joy debuted his line for Vision clothing, with Burberry Airy being a model for one of the posts. Though these clothes also fetched a fair price, they look really, really good, in my opinion. Carti also got creative directors to work with him for the creative direction for Whole Lotta Red, getting Matthew Williams from Givenchy on board to the Opium team, even being involved in the Givenchy ad. Matthew also happens to be the founder of 1017 Aleeks 9SM, so expect Opium to be in Givenchy and Aleeks' events one of these days. Aside from Carti's fashion changing, he also dyed his hair red. And as Whole Lotta Red dropped, there was merch that dropped alongside it. The mainstream often views this merch as weird since it has a lot of elements that people would disagree with. But that's the point of Carti's merch. It's meant to go against the grain, similar to the punk bands of the late 70s and early 80s. And you might possibly own a piece too. Moving forward, there was a variety of fit pics from Carti in all black outfits and Rick Owens. Carti's team members also started dropping their own clothes, like Ken Carson with his Teen X merch alongside Actual Hate. If you notice the angles on some of these pictures, they're in the 0.5 angle introduced in the iPhone 11. This angle dominated the Opium fan base and continues to do so today. The fits present in Carti's ornaments of Whole Lotta Red mainly incorporated Rick Owens. The newest members of Opium, Burberry Airy, and Mitch Modes made appearances in that performance. Carti's first live enactment of the album, mainly incorporating what we wear today. Those all black fits were all present too in the release party of Whole Lotta Red. And if you see that guy next to Carti, that's Bino, Homicide Bino, who we'll be talking more about later in the video. Continuing to January 2021, Destroy Lonely was getting called up to join Opium.
Right after Red dropped, I met bro.
The direction that the label was going for was dark, avant-garde, and a far cry from the fits that Carti was wearing during his self-titled day. The group would also often take pictures together. Ken and Lone would flick up together wearing Teen X merch. Ken even had a pop-up shop in Los Angeles selling the merch. Now, Opium fans would wear these all-black fits, Rick Owens, and would take pictures with him. The first wave of fit pics started in early 2021, as people loved Whole Lotta Red. They often go on cages, obscure locations, get in the 0.5 angle, and most of the comments would say, "Bro, thank you, Carti." Carti was starting to change clothing slowly, and his artists further exemplified this. TikToks would be made using Carti sounds, showing off outfits, but this wouldn't take over the app until late 2021 and early 2022. Carti, in the eyes of the mainstream, was getting more popularity. And as he was getting popularity, his label was too. Opium was gaining traction, and fans started flocking to their shows, though in a limited capacity, as Ken and Lone were still relatively underground and were on the come up. There's also this one fit pic that Ken had wearing a graphic hoodie, with graphic elements that will get this video demonetized, a possible precursor to the direction that he was going to take 2 years later. Ken was slowly getting out of the underground, having released his debut album Project X, and the outfits on it would be hard, with fans calling this the Project X era, and had iconic fit pics from Ken Carson, with fans replicating his poses. But there was another thing brewing up a few months later, something that would change the fashion of every Opium fan. In August of 2021, the post 9/13/21 came out, Carti's birthday. This post is what changed everything. Carti already wore the pieces that Debna made before, going all the way back to his Dilit era. If you don't know who Debna Vasilia is, he's the creative director of Balenciaga, the co-founder of Vetements, and Opium frequently wears Vetements and Balenciaga. In the Narcissist post, Carti's seen meshing his Rick Owens lunar boots with different pieces from Balenciaga. If you recall Carti's outfits before, they had elements that were tighter and skinnier, but this was different. Everything was baggy. There was another picture with a motorcycle helmet and Balenciaga bulldozers. All these pieces would be incorporated by Opium fans that year. Spending thousands of dollars for an outfit didn't sound so crazy anymore. More fit pics dropped featuring the caption Narcissist, but this wasn't the album. Instead, it was both a merch line and a tour. The merch was similar to the likes of Vetements and Balenciaga. They had bomber jackets, hoodies, and shirts imprinting the Narcissist logo, which had a metal-like font, and a $5,000 helmet to top it all off. However, this merch wasn't real, as Carti's website was hacked, leading to this merch never officially coming out. Instead, Carti's team members and friends wore the merch. Carti was seen wearing it alongside Lil Uzi. There were several fan promotional material featuring Carti in the motorcycle-like aesthetic, but that didn't really go through as we thought. As Carti was gaining traction in the fashion industry, a notable person in it would go and interview him, one of the greatest designers of all time, Richard Sansernino Owens, with Carti doing a photo shoot in a Rick Owens pentagram. Rick asked him a variety of questions, including who his favorite artist was, which he said was Art Dealer, because Art Dealer had no limits. And that's kind of what Carti has with his clothing. As the Narcissist tour was unfolding, merch was released alongside it. There were shirts and hoodies sporting the text Rockstar Made, Vamp, and Vamp Security, littering the concert. Carti's outfits in the tour was insane. Pieces from Balenciaga, Rick Owens, and Vetements, My personal favorite fit was when Carti performed in Rolling Loud Los Angeles.
He was wearing a big ass parka Vetmont.
Yeah, I was
that
in the
was
crowd
the
for
first
that.
show he ever started yelling. Like, like.
Throughout all the shows, Carti made sure to put a good outfit on, setting a standard for the Opium takeover of 2022. A few of Carti's final shows saw Carti wearing clown makeup. This took over the Opium fan base and people outside of it, and became a prevalent costume in the following Halloween. During the tour, Carti's team members became active on Instagram. Destroy Lonely posted a variety of fit pics which further influenced the youth. These fits were impossible to escape in 2022. The way that Lone took fit pics got fans to attempt to replicate it. 0.5 angles, random images of architecture, and the way that Lone posed were all things that fans copied in the following year, as Lone was gearing up to drop No Stylist. Fans even coined the term "bro think he destroy Lonely" whenever someone would wear an outfit that was similar to him. Lone's impact on culture during 2021 and 2022 was insane. He even went on to walk the runway for 1017 Leaks 97's Milan show. And as time progressed, new lines of clothing came from the brands that Opium often wore. One of the most notable pieces was the Balenciaga Raver pants, worn during Carti's performance in the Donna 2 concert. He even flew Burberry Aerie out for that show, with Aerie meeting Kanye West. Carti and his fans have all influenced different artists' clothing. There was also another thing that changed everything: the "My Funeral Gon' Be Lit" post. These pieces littered the landscape of 2022. Carti wore the Raver jeans a few more times in different posts, with Opium also following suit. Ken wore it in the Run Plus Rain video, mixing the Raver jeans with Rick Owens. But another piece that took over the year was the shrunken Sporty B Balenciaga t-shirt, which is a piece that you won't be able to escape from, even today. Something that also started were fashion TikTokers coming up, and saw a rise in people wearing Rick Owens, Vetmont, and Balenciaga, even if they were unaffordable. People all over the world were wearing Rick Owens. The way people would afford these pieces is they'd probably get them on Grailed, a website where you can get secondhand goods or U-goods, and Ken Carson also dropped another project, his sophomore album, X. And the music videos from it mainly saw Ken incorporating the Rick Owens and Balenciaga fits that was present throughout the year. In the Go music video, he wore Balenciaga hard Crocs and a leather Rick Owens hoodie. The Rick Owens gimp made several appearances throughout Opium's music videos. Another one was on Destroy Lonely's music videos for No Stylist. The song Vetmont Coat saw the Rick gimp present in the video, but it wouldn't be further exemplified until the music video for Freestyle 2, becoming a precursor for the fits in A Great Chaos. Moving forward to Destroy Lonely's No Stylist, Lone incorporated a corporate world shirt. There was actually merch for the No Stylist tour, with it being partly designed by Matthew Williams, with the 1017 leaks being plastered all over the merch. Most of Opium's fans wore high fashion from this point, and $1,000 for a shoe didn't sound so crazy like it did a few years ago. Two notable pieces from this era were the Vetmont Adult Entertainment shirt. One of Lone's poses would be interpolated by countless fans. The other pieces was the Vetmont Racing jacket, seen in MDMA and a few of Lone's pictures. Another brand and style was also introduced, a style similar to Cemetery and other rappers of the like, New Rocks and graphic shirts. By this, there were two pieces of merch that came out from the Opium camp. First was the X-Man tour with the X-Man merch, interpolating some of the themes from Vetmont with the Rated X merch. They also came out with the Destroy Lonely Ken Carson merch, being a collab between the two. I own some of this merch as well. This merch would encroach every aspect of the underground, even reaching different shows and events. But we still have to go back to the pioneer of every King Van. Carti released the actual Narcissist merch line, featuring a death metal-like Narcissist font. It also had hoodies with the mugshots of people who did not so nice things. In my opinion, the merch was really hard, but it fetched a fairly high price. These actually go for more than $500 on Grailed sometimes. Anyone can wear these clothes and can be considered a part of the aesthetic. It also had notable people wearing it, such as Young Lean and Blade. Moving forward for the next year, Opium was changing. Carti dropped the December 25 post with Betsy Johnson wearing full Balenciaga. Bino got a dress code violation, but made up for it a few weeks later. And Lone was gearing up to drop If Looks Could Kill with the Look Killer mask. But we're not at that point yet. In February, Ken dropped the merch for A Great Chaos, as he dropped the song I Need You. And the following month, Carti performed wearing the Balenciaga steroid boots and Rick Owens Bolins. These two pieces would continue to dominate the year among fashion people and Opium fans. Lone then dropped If Looks Could Kill a few months after this performance. As Lone dropped the project, there was more merch to drop following a purple setting. I personally don't own any of this, but depending on what you wear, it'd probably be hard. The theme during this year was more so dominated by Balenciaga, but Ken and Lone would do an interview with GOAT calling Rick the GOAT fashion brand.
I say Rick Owens. We wear Rick every day. We got Rick on right now.
And there was one piece that presided over everything this year, the Rick Owens gimp. Ken started wearing the Rick Owens gimp everywhere. The most notable pieces from this were the leather gimp set, the puffer gimp, and the normal gimp. Another thing was the new X-Man chain, covered in even more jewelry. But there was a person that was going to switch it up entirely for Opium and Carti. As July rolled around, Carti had a new member to the team, Sex is Death, who would introduce him to new fashion choices, getting her as a creative director and stylist. She'd introduce Carti to a Scandinavian specialty, death metal, with Carti incorporating even more unique fits over the years. She was also responsible for the new Opium logo, which would impact the fashion of all of Opium's members and fans in the future. She'd actually get him wearing an all-white outfit in November for Re-Edition magazine, which shook everyone up. But this wasn't anything new, as he also did that right after a whole lot of red. With time passing, there were new things to wear. Carti still wore Rick, most notably sporting it in the You're the Moon music video. But a brand that was changing everything at the moment was Hood by Air, a brand that Carti and his fans most recently started incorporating into their clothing. Fans didn't know what Hood by Air was during December 2023. If you were a fashion head, you probably did, but you would probably think Hood by Air was just another Carti song. Instead, this was an actual fashion brand, and it took off in 2023 and 2024. When Carti made the Hood by Air music video, rocking runway HBA, fans followed suit, buying all the HBA pieces they can. As the album was rolling out, fans started copying the photos and fits that Carti had. Other brands that have been incorporated by Carti are Anna Molina and Pel Pel. Most notably, the Givenchy fur coat that fans would even rumor that Yeet was wearing in Paris Fashion Week. Speaking of Paris Fashion Week, Carti was seen wearing unreleased music merch on it. There's actually more photos and variants of this merch that we won't see yet. For the time being, Balenciaga and Rick Owens released newer lines. The football shirt, 10XLs, and the new Under Armour set was taking precedent over the Opium fashion community. But there were newer things that Opium was getting into. Carti got into an even newer style, more streetwear-inspired clothing. He'd wear varsity jackets and basketball jerseys, mixing the dark aesthetic with streetwear. This might be the next direction that fans would take too, as Carti's one of the biggest trendsetters in the industry today.
It's even come to a point where in each jersey he had a repost. Carti's influence on fashion is insane, and would have anybody trying to replicate the things that he was wearing.
But at the same time, you had Ken Carson's performances for a great chaos. His outfits there were so tough, and he had this jacket that he wore in one of his performances that made him look like King Vamp in 2022. Opium actually has several fashion lines within their members. Burberry Airy has his Kim Kruger sets that are insanely tough. Mitch Modes has Life is War, fostering a community of those who can put it on. Opium has its own clothing line. Joy has his own thing too. And they've all inspired others to create brands of their own, even getting Opium members to start wearing them. Firstly, Brotherly Love got Lone and Airy to model for their pieces. Homicide Bino started wearing Full Boys Fetamine.
And me and a couple friends have a clothing brand called Sanguinary Studios, with clothing that explores darker themes. And I could definitely see people wearing it in the Opium style. And you might even see one of your favorite artists wear it in the future.
I feel like taking time to actually study the outfits that the members wear and the reasoning why those pieces work is the best way to make an Opium fit work. Actually putting your personality into it is the best thing, rather than being a copy paste of everybody else. Carti and Opium have changed an entire generation's fashion sense,
but they've made an equally as big impact on music too. Opium's been around for 4 years, from the baby voice all the way to a great chaos. Opium's laid the groundwork for what the underground might sound like in this current decade. And this was most evident when Carti was using his baby voice. Carti's baby voice has impacted several artists during 2020, the most notable one being Mario Judah, who dropped his own version of Whole Lotta Red using Carti's baby voice. And Coach Eyes, who many fans said was using Carti's baby voice, though I would just say he's inspired by Carti. The impact that Carti has had on the lyrics, flows, and beats of 2020 was significant. Richie South and Pierre Bourne's beats lured the underground and gave a defining sound to the music of that era. But there's another project that year that changed the entire industry. Even though Ken wasn't the first one to be on rage beats or invent the rage genre, his project Teen X would change a generation, and even influence Carti
on Whole Lotta Red. T-Nex was pretty new compared to what other people were doing in the underground, and this is because of the two main producers behind the project, Out of Town and Starboy, the Dutch duo of hyperpop JP. The beats they had were out of this world. The synths, 808s, and the way they just put the beats together was amazing. All that is complemented by Ken's flow, and you have T-Nex. But the song that would go down and change everything was Yale.
I keep your hoe upstairs. When she wanna fuck, I just tell her ring the bell.
And this song is still Ken's most popular song today. I'm gonna sound like I'm glazing right now, and I might be, but this song is what turned the tide of a genre. And that inspired other artists to try doing rage music too. In early 2021, you would see a variety of Ken Carson type beats on Google. You'd also see Carti using these types of beats. On Whole Lotta Red, he'd have a song called Beano produced by Lil 88, Out of Town, and Ken Carson. And another person this year that was making waves was Ken's future Opium twin, Destroy Lonely, having released the projects Broken Hearts and Broken Hearts Deluxe. His music this year, released and unreleased, paved the way for other artists to explore darker elements into their sound.
That life, baby, all my niggas real blood. In the trap, nigga, with some drip on me. Bitches mad, I don't pick up my cell phone. Yeah.
Carti's influence was already there for Ken and Lone. The mentions of all black fits, Rick Owens, and the vamp lifestyle were all prevalent in their lyrics, and all those themes were explored by Carti on Whole Lotta Red. I would argue that this album is the most influential album of the current underground, and might be for the current decade. When the album came out, it was met with mixed criticism. People both loved the hell out of this album, calling it revolutionary, and others called it trash, saying that Carti had to stick to his old V1 sound. But Carti wouldn't do any of that. Instead, the songs on the project would begin to shape the sound of other artists from its release date till today. Every other day, artists would look up Whole Lotta Red Carti type beat, and it's mainly because of Filthy. The songs like Stop Breathing, Rockstar Made a New Tank made a lasting impression on the way that the underground viewed hip-hop. It sounded amazing, and you wouldn't be wrong to say that. Whole Lotta Red had so many sounds that people would pick and choose what type of beats they would use from the album. In 2021, the underground was in one of the best spots it was in. Many fans often compare 2021 to 2016, and a variety of different underground artists started rapping on Whole Lotta Red beats. One of the first was an artist that you know very well today.
Woke up this little morning, my diamonds came in from Elliot. Pearls on that fucking bitch's neck, she's so elegant.
And a few weeks after that, Autumn came out with the Jump Out the House remix.
I'm rocking Gucci to Louis, my bitch rocking Fendi, Chanel, Margiela.
Over the following months, people's opinions on Whole Lotta Red started changing. The people that hated the album before started liking the album, and because of this, the music that people made often had a flair of Whole Lotta Red from it. Carti and Opium didn't start rage, but they've become one of the most influential figures in promoting the subgenre. Carti was actually the cover for the Rage playlist on Spotify in 2023. You'd also have songs like Mr. Rage with Trippie Redd, and it received remixes from Mario Judah. But music wouldn't stay stagnant. Music would evolve. Right after Whole Lotta Red dropped in January, Ken released the deluxe to T-Nex and T-Nex Relapsed, the music that fans loved. The lyric content, feel-good vibes,
We high as shit, yeah, we fly as shit. Got messing me hard, that's all on my kids. She all on my dish, she don't know what it is.
fans would make Ken Carson presets on YouTube, trying to replicate the T-Nex sound. You also had people trying to do Starboy and Out of Town's beats, and some would be more successful than others. Carti also signed two more people to Opium, Homicide Bino and Homicide Michi, group that made their first song and sent it to Carti, with Carti immediately saying they were stars after hearing the song.
Pull up on a nigga block with a guitar. Snotty get active for real. Gang gon' take this shit far. Leave you in the car.
Homicide Gang released Snotty World in May 5, releasing their songs Rockstar Trapper and Snotty Rock. They didn't have the electric guitar infused instrumentals yet, unlike 2022 and 2023, but the rage beats complementing the flow that they had was beautiful, and they've inspired other artists within Atlanta to sound just like them too. Ken dropped his debut album Project X right after this. The album was primarily produced by the trio of Lil 88, Starboy, and Out of Town. Many fans call this a feel-good project and a project that could just make you turn up. It had songs like Run Plus Ran, Change, and Hella. But the most popular song off the project was Rock and Roll, getting over 80 million plays on Spotify.
I'm tripping. This ACID got me tripping.
You see people try and replicate Ken's flow in the future. Pages like Hyperpop Daily often posted Ken Carson, and Opium was really starting to gain prominence during this year. But another person that was coming up was Destroy Lone. He was about to drop his album No Stylist, with Lone publishing a bunch of songs to his SoundCloud for the time being. There were pages like Destroy Lonely Archive and V Jacob who would often repost his unreleased music, but these pages would be taken down in the future, sadly. And No Stylist wouldn't come out until 2022. Instead, there'd be several collaborations between Ken and Lone during this time period. Moving forward a few months, there was the Narcissist Tour, which featured the Big Three and different associated acts like Rico Nasty. And fans would call this one of the best tours of the 2020, as Carti put every performance he had with unlimited energy. The tour saw people singing every lyric word for word, screaming at the top of their lungs. It even saw people getting possessed by the music. The tour saw insane guitar instrumentals from Ojivolt back in Carti's songs. It would prompt fans to do covers of these songs, calling this the Narcissist intro to either Stop Breathing, New Tank, or any song of Whole Lotta Red, and even songs outside of Whole Lotta Red. Sometimes Carti wouldn't even sing the lyrics to his songs. He would scream and screech, but the energy that Carti had was enough to make the performance amazing. This was around the time people started calling Carti the best performer, alongside Travis Scott, and he would even influence the way people performed today. The tour also had Ken and Lone's first performances to an audience that was big, and their shows wouldn't disappoint. Ken performed classics there like Teen Bean and Yale. And Lone showed up too, but around this time, Lone was a pretty underground artist. Fans didn't really know the lyrics to his songs yet, and he was kind of nervous the first few performances. But Ken would encourage his Opium twin to keep going, and that's what he did. As 2022 rolled around, Opium was set to release 3 projects, changing the course of what the underground sounded like. Lone was set to drop No Stylist later this year. No Stylist was one of the most highly anticipated projects in the underground. This, in turn, prompted other artists to be influenced by the dark nature of Lone's music. 2022 saw people like Roland Thrax, Dom Corleo, and Hard Rock rise. People listening to their music often said they gave them Destroy Lonely vibes. Dom Corleo released the song Penthouse Shorty that year. The lyric content is also fairly similar to Lone's. Moreover, Lone became known for sampling songs from the 2000s. Though he wasn't the first person to do this, he made it fairly popular within the underground, with people sampling Deftones and making Destroy Lonely type beats. A person that was potentially inspired by this was Hard Rock, releasing the song Feel Alive, sampling Deftones. Though you could say he already liked this music before, many fans often make the comparison between the two because of the similarity between their beats. Today, Dom Corleo and Hard Rock are artists that have created their own sound and have become fairly successful in the process of getting their own music out there. But one project that was supposed to come out first was Ken Carson's X, executively produced by Playboi Carti, with productions from Out of Town, Starboy, Lil 88, and Filth. The album got some artists into the distorted beats, violent lyrics, fashion, and the rock star lifestyle that Ken was portraying on the project. Fans also loved it by attending the X-Man tour. There was also another breakthrough in the realm of instrumentals, with Homicide Gang sampling bands from the 80s and 90s to their music, sampling Homicide using the quote-unquote rage trap beats, and I'd have to say these beats are insanely hard. He even influenced other artists in Atlanta to hop on these types of beats and continue to do so until this day. But the underlying question is, when is Carti drop? It's been almost 2 years since the release of Whole Lotta Red. There's yet to be an album. Whole Lotta Red has become one of the most influential projects in the underground, with artists even playing songs on the album in their own concerts as openers, being seen in Yeat's tour, and much more. As 2023 rolled around, there were a few snippets featuring a deeper voice from Carti, but fans didn't believe that this was him at first. This voice was going to take over the year. In the following month, Ken dropped I Need You and was getting ready for his album A Great Chaos. He had a lot of snippets this year, which formed a sound that fans were inspired by. One of the most notable people inspired by this was Osama-san, who fans often called the Ken clone because of the way that he sounded and the beats that he used. Moving forward, you had Lone dropping and Flux Could Kill, and this album was met with a bunch of mixed reactions. His impact on music this year was still pretty big, but his impact on culture in early 2023 was insane, and we'll be covering that later in the video. For now, we'll be looking at Carti, who's previewed new snippets and new songs for the rollout of music. Carti's voice started changing. He had the song Fiend with Travis Scott in July of 2023, and it shocked the world. Fans didn't know who did this verse. Many speculated if it was Future, Homicide, Bino, or Michi, but in the end, it was Carti. And fans loved this verse and new sound, loving it so much that they'd actually get this voice and use it to make careers of their own. There's several AI artists who have a substantial amount of monthly Spotify listeners using the AI Carti voice. The biggest example is the artist Twin, who has 4 million monthly Spotify listeners, even having an album called Project YVL, and has features from AI Travis Scott. He's one of the most successful people in this field, even making music videos. And if you know the songs Telescope and all these other songs trending on TikTok, that's because of Twin. It's not Carti. But Opium's not only exclusive to Ken, Lone, Carti, and Homicide. They've actually been making rave music. One of the most underrated members of the label, and a member that you might not know, is 00 Gabe, who previously worked with Lil Peep in the past, but is currently in the Opium team. Gabe and Filthy got an album called 00 Rave that's not out yet, incorporating rave music with the Opium aesthetic, and it's hard as hell. The same thing goes for Starboy. Starboy has his own music using him and Out of Town's productions, and fans would say it's out of this world. These sounds have inspired others to create music similar to Gabe, Filthy, and Starboy. Many often say that 2 Hollis takes inspiration from Starboy, but he's been making music for a long time already. Opium's influence doesn't only extend to America though, as people all over the world have been making similar music to Opium. Russia has Viper, comprised of Kai Angel and 9 Mice, who also collaborates with Opium affiliates like Unique. Japan has some Opium-inspired artists too, who do music very similar to Carti. And most importantly, the UK. There are several artists in the UK that are inspired by Opium. One of these people you could say is Femi Guerrero. However, the music he makes now is pretty distinct from Opium.
My Rick or anagrams, my clothes as black as me. Money, sex, power, drugs, all I need.
And you could also say Skywater has a bit of an Opium element to it, but I wouldn't say that Skywater sounds exactly like Opium. I would say these 2 artists are fairly inspired by the label. The same thing goes for SD Kid. SD Kid even shouts out Playboi Carti in the song. Ken Carson also had another album that was influencing the youth. You had people making remixes to just about every song off the album, adding intros to every track, and creating a great chaos mixes with transitions. The album was mainly produced by Out of Town and Starboy, and it's had took over the year. The album would also have a tour in the A Great Chaos tour, having opening acts like 2 Hollis. However, we don't know if 2 Hollis is going to join the label. Opium continues to influence artists' music today. Carti's new voice and style will continue to be incorporated into the artists that listen and take inspiration from him. The same thing goes for Ken and Lone. Underground artists today and tomorrow credit Opium as their main inspirations behind making music. But this all wouldn't be possible without Opium changing the culture of our decade.
Pushing your black rich prayer. Somebody sit on my prayer. Somebody send some prayers.
Opium's impact on culture isn't to be understated. Many fans describe the fan base as cult-like, following just about everything that the label does, defending them at every given moment and going as far as acting just like them, from the mannerisms to the way they do handshakes. Opium's changed the way that this generation interacts with one another. To further investigate how this happened, we'll analyze what Carti did in 2019 to change how people feel and look at him, and in the future, his label. Carti's baby voice was one of the most notorious examples of him changing culture, getting everyone to comment on how he had a language called Cartinese. Fans even made remixes to these songs with a Minecraft setting, and fans would also try to replicate the baby voice, becoming a staging ground for the cultural shift that Carti was going to be responsible for in the following years. Around this time, rappers really liked Carti's music. Carti's fashion, music, and aesthetic were all eccentric in nature, but they all worked. Many often looked at Carti as the guy who did the baby voice, but the things he was about to do or not do would change the way we look at music entirely. When Carti signed Ken Carson and the first initial members to the team, they were planning a takeover. And that's what they did. Carti was already heavy into the anti-establishment imagery, but this would ramp up even more in 2020. In this era, Carti was known for a few things. One was being the guy who dropped Dial It and often texted in his own language. People even made a website to translate how Carti talked. Carti fans at the time were called V-Lone Thugs, but this all changed in the Vampire Weekend Red.com post, the post that sparked the movement that we still have today. Carti also did an interview with Culture Kings saying that he was going to focus on his label, and that he did. The Opium logo would be made with the Comme des Garçons asterisk at the bottom of its U. Now, if you were an Opium member, you'd wear an official Opium chain to signify your status. Moving forward, Carti hasn't dropped a whole lot of red. He wasn't the first person to take a long time to drop an album, since the wait between Eternal Take and Love is Rage 2 is about 2.5 years, whilst the wait between Dial It and Whole Lotta Red was 959 days. You'd see this frequently in Opium's camp, and people who are inspired by Opium. People often credit Carti to be one of the most mysterious artists in hip-hop, if not the most mysterious, getting his label to follow suit. Opium has this code where you can't disclose much about what goes on in the label. In fact, Carti hasn't done an actual interview since 2020. He'd do a fit check and several magazine interviews, but never an actual interview where you'd see him sitting down with an interviewer. Other artists would follow this mysterious persona blueprint, not saying anything, following a select number of people, and not dropping music for a significant amount of time. Carti's been doing this for years, ever since Whole Lotta Red started rolling out. There'd actually be a controversy within the Whole Lotta Red rollouts with Mario Judah, as he was fed up with Carti's mysterious act, opting to drop Whole Lotta Red for Carti, and Carti's team didn't like that either. This was also incorporated by Destroy Lonely and Ken Carson in the rollouts of Love Lasts Forever and A Great Chaos. Carti used to give out dates, but that didn't result in the album dropping. It's a technique to build even more hype for the project, getting more and more fans involved in the process of waiting for their music to come out. It also gives time for the artist to rework the album to give you something even better. This was the process used in the 3 versions of Whole Lotta Red. And finally,
I am the music.
2021 also saw a shift of how people viewed the members of Opium. Fans made jokes when Lone wore Converses, saying he violated the dress code of Rick Owens only. From this point, you had songs like Teen Bean gaining prominence on TikTok. Songs like Yale would also gain a bunch of attention from fans on the app. This would transcend generations.
He's not even Teen X. Him.
For Lone, his song Bane would go mega viral early on, but it was just the instrumental. Many didn't know who actually did this song. Like what I said in the music section earlier, the producers are one of the biggest contributors of this cultural shift. The instrumentals were perfect listens in any setting. This was also the year where Lone's music was picking up on the internet. Songs like Hold My Hand and In the Air came out, and people often walked around through gothic architecture listening to Lone's music. I'd actually argue that Lone's the second most influential person responsible for the formation of the Opium aesthetic. He had people wearing all black fits to underground shows that wasn't even his. Ken also gained a bunch of traction this year for his aesthetic, and it was fire. This was the high as hell era, and the visuals he had were insane. The way that Ken was carefree, didn't care about anything, got fly, was Ken's Teen X era, an era to remember. From this point, you had several aspects of Opium molding the generation today to what it is. From Carti's Narcissist tour to him being on and off the grid, Opium was the new group that everyone had their eyes on. The worldwide appeal was already there, and countless questions were asked on who these members were. And their appeal was further exemplified through their fashion, wherein some people can credit and trace their entire careers to the fit pics that Opium members used to post. Moving on in 2022, this is when Opium really took off. Creators on TikTok started posting content mainly centered around the Opium fashion style and aesthetic. And when Ken released his sophomore album X, the culture of how people viewed Opium as mosh pit music was getting even bigger from the songs on the album. They'd even go as far as saying Freestyle 2 was the GOAT mosh pit song. Ken's songs would get an insane amount of dances on TikTok, and this would go even further in the future. The mainstream started noticing who Carti's label members were, with Anthony Fantano reviewing X, giving it a low rating, receiving backlash from Opium fans. The project also saw multiple collaborations with Destroy Lonely on MDMA and Murder Music, getting the mainstream to find out who the Opium twins are. It'd go even further a month later when No Stylist came out. From this point, Ken and Lone's popularity were fairly similar, but the No Stylist audio on TikTok was gaining crazy attention. You'd have people from all walks of life lip syncing to the song, probably not even knowing who Destroy Lonely is. You also had posts of people saying you've met a Destroy Lonely fan, or this is so Destroy Lonely. As the Ken Carson Destroy Lonely tour was happening, there were people in that crowd that would eventually become their own artists. Netspend's one of those people, and I think it's safe to say that he's definitely inspired by Opium, even going as far as working with Opium members in the future, having collaborated with Joy Division. As time passed, it was Halloween. Ken and Lone were riding around in masks, playing what fans called at the time Snitch. There was also another song that increased Lone's popularity to an insane level, If Looks Could Kill. If Looks Could Kill would go on to become Lone's second most popular song behind No Stylist, and the impact it had on culture in 2022 to 2023 was massive. Creators like 44boy took advantage of this and gained millions of views doing the If Looks Could Kill TikToks. As time went, people all over the world started liking Opium's music. There were even people in the NBA listening to it. A notable example would be Jaren Jackson Jr. of the Memphis Grizzlies, and he even did an interview saying that he was an Opium fan.
Everything's branched from Carti. Yeah. There you go. You know how people say like Thug and everything's branched from him? Well, there's a whole world of that, but like Carti.
Streamers also got on the Opium wave. Kai Cenat got tapped in with Ken Carson, and whenever he'd listen to a Ken Carson song, he'd try to fit up in full Rick Owens. You also have people like Bruce Drop 'Em Off hanging out with Destroy Lonely. This was the year where being Opium was being thrown around like crazy. Opium's aesthetic was inspiring countless people during this year, even going as far as saving lives. There's a video of a Carti fan saying they were bringing nostalgic elements back to music as well. Ken Carson put the GIMP holes on old 2000s cartoons and had a 2000s internet horror aesthetic for the rollout of Great Chaos. Fans started making edits of these 2000s websites, and some would call it disturbing, and others call it pretty cool. Osama-san would also do a variant of this by doing it for his album Flex Music. Some of the promotional material had that 2000s-like feel seen in some of Ken's videos. This would go on until today, with Ken being one of the main people responsible for having that shock-filled style. A Great Chaos was one of the most groundbreaking albums for Opium, with the songs on it reaching mainstream status. Xiaomi actually has an ad using Jennifer's body too. This was around the time where the Jennifer's Body % accurate meme started gaining popularity. The album cover for A Great Chaos was also recreated by several other people. One of the most notable ones was LeBron James. During this year, the term aura was getting thrown around. Aura is basically the energy that you give off and is a way to rate how people perceive somebody. Whenever a picture of Carti came out, fans would call it aura. And when Carti made an appearance in Ken's A Great Chaos release party, fans would say he had unlimited aura. Same thing goes for Ken when he goes out, and Lone when he goes out. This was also reflected on their fans. If fans acted a certain way or acted similar to Carti in that mysterious fashion, fans would say they had aura. Carti was also changing how people acted during the music era, popularizing several things. Firstly, the YVL handshake, and the term YVL itself, which means Young Vamp Life. It also comes up as a hand symbol. This hand symbol took over the community, with everyone doing it. But there's one more person that's going to change everything.
Ever since I was a kid, knew I was the shit.
Try to keep on and come round.